This is a summary video of the Cafe Racer project I made at the beginning of 2021. So, first of all, what is a Cafe Racer? A Cafe Racer is a type of motorcycle that has been customized to look minimalistic. They feature custom leather seats, lowered forks, and usually quite wide and fat tyres, with an exposed engine. 13th of January, the beginning of the project. So this is what the motorcycle looked like in the very beginning when I purchased it. I purchased it second hand, and it's a Honda CGL 125. So the next day, my brother and I started taking the bike apart, and as you can see, we just lifted the bike up by using some kind of ramp. So we tied the bike down and stripped it down piece by piece, bolt by bolt, and at the end, we just had the engine with the chassis left over. Some of the bolts and nuts on the bike were quite rusty, so it was a bit of a challenge taking them out. And even though my brother helped me with taking the bike apart, he was quite interested in the project at first, but didn't end up helping after that. But yeah, it was fine. Once the bike was completely stripped down, I had to look at getting new parts, and I started searching. After a few days of searching online, I found Emre, who was selling second-hand parts from his previous customs or builds. So I asked my dad to drive me down to Emre's workshop, and I was amazed. He had lots of parts, as you can see in the photos, and he was quite a nice man. And I ended up buying 2 wheels from him, and one of them came with Virago 250 forks. I also found and bought a rear wheel from another Virago 250 as well, which I would use to swap out the front wheel of the Virago 250 for, so I would have two 15-inch wheels in the front and the back. Next were the parts that I would purchase online. These included the headlight, the bar end mirrors, the speed gauge, the stop LEDs, and the exhaust strap as well. While I was waiting for the parts to arrive, we started cutting and welding. The person you see in the picture is Inanç. He helped me throughout most of the project and provided the tools and the knowledge to actually customize the motorcycle. Here you can see him cutting and grinding the chassis, and in the middle there, he's cutting the stem, which would be pressed into the triple trees, as the front forks are swapped from the CGL to the Virago 250. The picture on the right shows the chassis cut and the seat roughly placed on top. While Inanç was working on the chassis, cutting and welding, I took the exhaust, the original exhaust from the CGL, and started cutting it, as I would change the header because it just looked very ugly. Back in Inanç's workshop, we swapped the front wheel of the CGL with the back wheel of the Virago 250, so we had to do a hub swap for that, as one was the front wheel and one was the back. So here, after most of the parts were done and collected, we did a test assembly to see how everything would fit together. Left is the assembly with the original red gas tank. It looked quite ugly and it didn't really fit in with the whole vibe of the Cafe Racer. It was quite small and it didn't fit the curves of the overall bike. So Inanç found a gas tank from a Planeta 5, a Russian motorcycle. And we ended up using that instead, and I think it looked quite nice. You can see at the lower left corner, the rear shocks I used. They're just aftermarket rear shocks in black, and I ended up swapping them with the original rusty rear shocks, and I think it looks much better. You can also see that the tyres have been replaced and swapped with the Metzeler 140 by 90 I bought, and they look much better than the previous thin, flimsy ones. So yeah, that was a good improvement as well. By the 4th of February, everything was painted. The parts on the left were painted by hand, as well as the tyres in the middle, and everything on the right, so that includes the chassis, the rear swing arm, and the rest of the metal bits, they were powder coated, so they were sent away for powder coating. One thing I ended up removing from the original bike was the mudguard. It was very rusty and it was quite large, and I just didn't like the look of it. So I went ahead and designed it myself. I used Fusion 360 for all the CAD and the modelling, since I had an educational license that I acquired previously. On the right you can see the 3D printed parts of the mudguard that I designed. I sent the STL file of the model to my cousin who kindly printed it for me in ABS. You can see that the print quality isn't the best, but it would suffice. Here you can see the final assembly. I called it the final assembly, although it was just the only picture I had near the end. So the final assembly would actually be with the handlebars, with all of the brake lines, the clutch lines, the brake levers, obviously the headlight, but I'm going to get onto that later. But yeah, this was just the picture I had, so I ended up using this. This is on the 9th of February. So here are the final additions onto the bike that were designed by me and actually printed by me as well. So you can see the headlight, the mudguard, the final version, and some experimental clip-on handlebars. So the 3D printed mudguard. On the right is a rendering, and I'll quickly play a video of the process of modelling it. So there you can see the model done, and I printed this out of ABS again, and on the right is the final product. So I also printed the headlight housing. So I should probably correct myself. The headlight it wasn't actually made by me. The headlight I bought online, but I bought it without a housing, so I forgot to buy that. So I ended up modelling it and printing it, which the modelling took, I think, just over a day, and the printing took 22 hours. So here is another video of the modelling process. So yeah, and I ended up 3D printing the parts on my Ender 3 V2 printer that I just got recently. This is the experimental clip-on handlebars that I designed, and I printed out of PETG, but I wasn't sure if that was going to hold all of the force that was exerted on it while steering the bike. So I didn't actually end up using them, but if I could manufacture them out of aluminum 6061, if I had access to a CNC machine, that would be cool, but I don't, so yeah, tough luck. But here is the video of the modelling process. I made a drawing of the model with the dimensions just in case I decided to manufacture it with a CNC out of aluminum, but I haven't done that yet, so. And here's the final product. Here are just a few photos. Yeah, you can see it's all complete. The handlebars I ended up using were slightly high, so I guess the cafe racer look wasn't achieved with this version. But yeah, I think it looks pretty cool. This is what the bike looks like now. I changed the handlebars and I think it looks much better. It's lower, I found it much easier to ride, especially with the way that I'm seated on the bike. So yeah, and it looks much better as well. So here is the final comparison. This is what we started with on the left, and this is what we have on the right. Yeah, it's quite a big change. I chose to post the bike's pictures on Reddit to see what people would think, and mostly I've received good feedback, positive feedback, so I'm quite happy about that. And I got 378 upvotes, which is pretty good. So you can see from the feedback that it's not all positive. Some people didn't like the style or didn't like the way I built it, or yeah, or so this guy here, he said, I love everything here but the exhaust wrap. Kind of wrecks the look. That's his opinion, that's fine. And I like the exhaust wrap personally, so I wouldn't change it. But yeah, that's just what he thinks. Funny comment here. Guy says no when I asked yes or no to the build. That's fine. Some guy said, may I have? And Jim March, actually here, this Redditor here, he wrote quite a hefty list slash summary of the build. It was quite surprising because I don't know this guy. I haven't been in previous contact with him. But he ended up writing this whole thing, and he listed what he liked, what he didn't like, what he would have changed, what I should have done or what I shouldn't have done, what I did good, bad, everything, yeah. Just from reading that, I can tell that he's very experienced, and yeah, it's good to have feedback that is actually constructive. This isn't even all he wrote. He actually, it was longer, but I just couldn't fit it on the page for the presentation. And when I replied to him saying, thank you, and just going through his points saying, this is how I did it, this is why I did it, blah, blah, blah. And he replied with another comment twice the length of the previous one. And, he said, yeah, that's good, that's bad, that will affect this, that will affect that. And it was actually, yeah, it was pretty good hearing that, especially from someone who I don't know, who isn't judging my work at all and can say it honestly. Yeah, thank you, Jim March, I guess. So yeah, that's the summary of the project. I hope you guys liked it, and make sure to just drop down any questions you might have in the comments. And yeah, thank you.